What we did this year is, just farmer innovation. We mounted a cutter bar on the front of our tractor so we could cut 3 to 4 feet high. And then in the rear 3-point hitch, we had the rear mount, which is a standard rear mount cutter.
That's Lancaster County hemp farmer Steve Groff. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and today I'm going to be talking to Steve about his farmer ingenuity down there. He's going to tell us about his homemade multi-level sickle bar cutter that he used to cut down his 50 acres of hemp. And now he's trying out some hay mergers to move that hemp around on the field without disturbing his cover crops. So a lot to talk to Steve about today. So all that and more today, including a few nuggets of hemp news. But first, let's hear about our sponsors. Our show today is brought to you with generous support from our friends at IND Hemp in Fort Benton, Montana, where they believe in the goodness of hemp. The people at IND Hemp are great facilitators of community and cooperation, and they're doing great things in the hemp industry, so check them out at indhemp.com. Our show is also made possible with generous support from Americhon Cast Hemp. That's Cameron and Melissa McIntosh's company here in Pennsylvania, where they are building an incredible business in the hemp space, sort of based around the E-Reezy spray-applied hempcrete system. So check them out at americhon.com, and you can make all of your hempcrete dreams come true. And I'll have links to both companies on the show page for this episode at lancasterfarming.com. All right, welcome back. So here we are. It's the first week of September 2023. Time's just flying by again, as it does this time of year. It's harvest time. It's back to school time. Just a lot happening. Some news here in the studio here in Ephrata at the Lancaster Farming office. I finally installed the Hempcrete acoustic sound panels in my studio here. You can see some photos of the panels on the show page for this episode and plus on our Instagram feed. I will have a video and maybe an article about the process of making these panels at some point soon. I'll let you know when that hits. So otherwise, we've got some news nuggets here for you for this first week of September. And again, these are news stories that I found online that I've read, and then I asked my friends at ChatGPT to summarize them for me. So what you're going to hear me read then is a summary written by a robot. Anyway, this first story comes to us from KQUR 89.3, the NPR station in Kansas City. It's written by Dylan Lyson. The headline says, Kansas farmers rushed to grow hemp when it became legal, but now they're ditching it. And I just want to take an issue with the headline. The story's not actually about that. It's more about the people who are using hemp for fiber and grain and how much opportunity is there. So anyway, editors over there at the NPR station, come on. Anyway, the story says that Kansas has seen a steep decline in hemp farming as CBD oil production wanes. In 2019, over 200 farmers joined the state's hemp program, but this year only 41 secured licenses. The drop in demand for CBD has led to a shift towards other hemp products like fiber for clothing and grain for animal feed. While the CBD market has slowed, there's optimism about the potential of these alternative hemp markets in Kansas, with some businesses already thriving in fiber and grain production. So there's some people doing great things out there in Kansas. And I think the folks at the NPR station need to write better headlines, right? Make them positive. Speaking of positive, here's a positive headline. I found this story on the Cornell Chronicle. It's written by Kathy Hovis, and the headline says, Seeing a Bright Future for Hemp in NYS, which I assume is New York State. Anyway, the computer wrote this summary for me. Haley Green, an MBA student at Cornell, is focusing on the industrial applications of hemp through her company Green Acres Processing. She plans to build the Northeast's first industrial hemp processing facility, emphasizing regenerative practices. The facility will provide processing services to independent growers and sell carbon credits for additional revenue. Green sees hemp as a versatile and sustainable resource for products like paper, clothing, fuel, building materials, and bioplastics. Despite challenges in the U.S. hemp industry, she aims to build an industrial hemp supply chain in New York and plans to plant 100 acres of hemp next summer with a processing facility ready by 2024. Her goal is to support farmers and promote sustainability. Yeah, go Haley. And I actually met Haley a couple of weeks ago here in Pennsylvania. She attended the Penn State Twilight Hemp Walk, so it was nice to meet you, Haley. So yeah, I've gotten to know the folks at Cornell a little bit better as I'm working on a Cornell episode. So anyway, this next story also has a Cornell connection, and I'll get to that in a sec. So this next story I read on Marijuana Moment. It's written by Ben Adlin, and it says USDA releases new hemp handbook as agency works to rebuild a post-prohibition seed bank. And then the summary goes like this. The USDA is working to rebuild a government seed bank for hemp that was previously destroyed during Prohibition and has issued updated guidance on identifying, describing, and evaluating various hemp varieties. This hemp descriptor and phenotyping handbook provides comprehensive information on the characteristics and traits of hemp, including morphology, yield, cannabinoid content, oil production, fiber quality, and more. The goal is to help researchers and breeders differentiate between hemp varieties for various applications and preserve genetic diversity. The USDA is actively contributing to the hemp industry's growth through educational initiatives and support, although the sector faced economic challenges last year due to a lack of FDA regulations on hemp derivative products. Yeah, see, even the robot knows that the FDA is lacking or slacking. So I'll have a link to the actual handbook at the USDA. It's actually on the ARS website. But if you look at who the editors of this handbook are, one of them is Tony Baracco, who I interviewed for my Cornell episode that's coming up. So yeah, pretty neat stuff happening up there in New York. Anyway, so what else? Well, I'm headed down to a field day tomorrow in Frederick, Maryland, where the folks at Heart Hemp are going to be sort of unveiling their operation. So I'm looking forward to that. And then next week, if all goes well, I will be up at Cornell's field day up in Geneva. So that's actually next Thursday, September 14th. All right, so that does it for our news and updates here. When we'll get into my conversation with Lancaster County hemp farmer Steve Groff. Steve Groff, welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Eric. Thank you. And as always, good to be back.
Yeah, I think the last time you were on the podcast, you were standing in a 500-acre field of hemp in Montana.
With you.
With me. Yeah, I was there too.
And that was quite a sight to behold. I think for those of us who, have been interested in the industry, we see our little test plots here and there. And, I've grown a few fields of it, and I grew 50 acres this year, but I actually think that field was, even bigger than that, 700 acres, and another field that was over 500 acres. But, to see that scale was, it's like, wow, this just might happen, and
Yeah.
It was encouraging. It was inspiring
for sure.
to be there, to see that.
Yeah, I love what they're doing out there. And it's neat too when, Montana was all like tan, right? Because they had just harvested all the wheat.
Yeah.
And then you come upon this great big swath of dark green. It was
Like an oasis in the middle of Montana.
Yeah. So anyway, I understand that you've got some new pieces of equipment there on the farm for some harvesting. And let's, bring us up to speed. What's happening there at Cedar Meadow?
Well, as we all know, there are some challenges with handling hemp. We just haven't had the equipment that's been designed for it. But there's some things out there. And first of all, you think about haymaking equipment. What can you utilize kind of as is, or what do you need to adapt? And it's pretty clear that for cutting it, you need a sickle bar type mower. And that's kind of where the direction we're headed. We have been talking with Bish Enterprises. They have a 4-bar, or 3 or 4-bar, depending what you want.
Yep.
And I really think, I'm convinced now that multiple cut is where we need to be going, unless there's a unless there's a specific reason that a processor wants 6 foot long fibers.
Hmm.
Then we have to change, our approach to cutting. But when you cut a hemp stalk in 2 or 3 foot sections, then it makes it easier for the haymaking equipment already in existence to go through the retting process and the baling process. So it's getting the hemp crop cut in pieces is important. And I think as the industry evolves, we'll find out where that sweet spot is. Right now, having your hemp stalks 2 to 3 feet is good. Now, we weren't able to get a 4 bar cutter here on time this year. There is demand for them, and we couldn't get one here in time. So we kind of based off last year's success. We used one of I&J Equipment's model. It's actually an ESM cutter bar. It's a double sickle. If you know anything about them, it's ironic is the Amish really like these because they don't clog up in thick, wet grass situations.
Okay.
So instead of using, you might say, the newest, latest, and greatest, although this is an updated version of the 100-year-old sickle technology. But it is kind of ironic. We're kind of going back in time here,
Right.
in a way, in technology
Yeah.
to cut our hemp. And so that
So
has
you
done
did get it cut?
we did. What we did this year is, just farmer innovation. We mounted a cutter bar on the front of our tractor. And we got a local machine shop here, Joe's Machinery, to make up the mounting brackets. In other words, we dropped off the cutter and we brought the tractor there, and he said, "Here, put this on the front of the tractor." And in a couple hours, they had it done. And that was the front of our tractor, so we could cut 3 to 4 feet high. And then in the rear 3-point hitch, we had the rear mount, which is a standard rear mount cutter. So we had a two. And then I'll just fast forward now, as you kind of indicated, we've got other machinery here.
No,
For
hold on.
retting.
I want to linger on that modification there. So I'm just trying to picture this. You got your tractor with one cutter up kind of high on the front of
Yes.
the tractor. So
Yep.
it's moving along, chopping that, and then you've got your sickle bar in the back cutting the low stuff.
That's
so you're
correct.
getting
You
two
got it.
different sections. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love that.
So essentially, on 8 to 10 foot tall hemp, you have 4 to 5 foot long stalks,
Okay.
which is better than 8 to 10 foot.
Right. And so you're dropping these in your fields, and
Yeah.
your fields are no-till, right? So there's a cover
Oh, yeah.
crop there already.
That's
Yeah.
correct. There's still remains of the biomass from the cover crop that we planted into in the
Okay.
spring.
So
And
what do you do to, like, what you're going to go in and ret that, move it around? You're going to ted it? Like, what happens? And then how do you maintain the cover crop on the field?
so the retting process is usually time where you ideally would like a couple showers of rain. And it's opposite of making hay, where you want to get it in as quickly as possible, as dry as possible, as green as possible. You don't want green in hemp. You want the sun to bleach it out, and you want it's actually the microbes to start breaking down I'm not scientific here, but the stuff around the fiber, so the fiber is easier to
The
extract.
lignins and the pectins.
I thought that was the word, but thank you. I didn't want to speak out
It's all
wrong.
right.
So you want to separate the fiber from the lignins and the pectins. Thank you, Eric. And it makes it easier for the process to have the begin to start to break down. That's really what retting means. So to stir, you need to stir the crop around because if you just leave it lay, the bottom, what's near the bottom will stay green because the sunlight doesn't reach it all. It's thick enough. So you need to stir it around. And so you can use hay tedders that are, but when you have 4 or 5 foot long, stalks, they're not designed to handle that. They're designed to handle 2 to 3 foot long, like hay stems are, and generally not even as thick as hemp. So we got a machine in here that I had the idea that we can't use the traditional rakes that are rotary rakes or even bar rakes that would essentially rake aggressively and clean up the cover crop biomass that is still on my soil surface. So when I planted the hemp, you picture 3 foot tall cover crop rolled down and you plant the hemp. Well, that 3 foot tall cover crop is now laying down there like straw.
It's like your
Well,
mulch.
in mulch, yeah, and it's doing its thing. But if you go through and stir up the hemp stalks, you're going to pick some of that up, and it's going to go into the hemp crop, which now that's debris. And it's number one, it's bad for decorticating because you got to get it out, but it's also bad for me as a farmer who values the soil being covered. I'm going to keep the soil covered.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing noticed last year is when we raked with a rotary rake the third time, which you have to do this a couple times, but the third time to get it ready to bale, by then we were literally knocking off some of the 3 to 4 inch tall stems, and they were being swept up, the stems that are still attached to roots, and they were even being broken off and swept up and put into the windrow.
Okay.
And that's, again, debris. That's not desired. And stones, you can get some stones. We have stones in our area. If you're too aggressive, stones are really bad.
And that's just extra work for the processor at that point if you're dropping off bales with all that extra stuff in.
It's debris. It's contamination, whatever word you want to use. So I had this idea to skip ahead to the currently in haymaking world, the idea of using what they call mergers, where they merge together swaths or windrows. And this is typically used for forage production where they're chopping it in the field. And the reason this attracted me is if you're familiar with a pickup mechanism of a baler where it has teeth, that's what we call them, teeth, and they spin around and they pick up the hay, and they put it, so in a merger, they put it on a belt, that a belt runs to the one side, can go left or right, and put it in a windrow, either merging two together or just moving it. And the reason hay mergers are becoming more popular is they pick up less stones, which in the context of the chopping equipment, that saves the knives from dulling, but also they've actually seen increased feed value for the cattle that eat it, that there's not dust and dirt and different things in that, debris again.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought this could be good because it's not as aggressive the way it picks up the hemp, or it could pick up the hemp, and I could run it enough that are high enough off the ground to get the hemp lifted up and moved, but not pick up my cover crop. I know it's a long-winded description, but I have to describe it all.
Yeah.
So we searched literally the world over, and we found one that we really liked. It was made in Quebec. And we talked to the company, and they were excited about the possibility of trying it. Found out there was a dealer here in Pennsylvania, and my son and I, we drove 2.5 hours to see this machine on the July 4th weekend, and we really liked it. And I'll just shout it out. It's Anderson is the name of it, and just the design of it, I thought was better than a lot of other hay mergers that I've seen and we've researched. So we talked about that. And then after we saw that, my son David found another merger in Europe, actually in the country of Austria. And the name of that one is Ryder. And we thought that the way that one looked, it was like the best one that we ever saw. Actually, the width of the pickup can flex. It can flex the ground contours. I don't know of any other one that can do that.
Okay.
And just with the narrow profile, we thought this is the best one out there. We got to try this, but it's in Austria. There's no way we can get one here for this season. Well, we'll see what happens, and we'll talk to them. Maybe we can get one for next year.
Right.
So David, my son, was up at Ag Progress Days here in the second week of August at Penn State Ag Progress Days.
Sure.
And he was shocked to see that the Ryder machine was there. And so not only was the machine there, the owner and the owner, who's also the developer and designer, was there as well.
From the company in Austria?
From the company in Austria. He was there from Austria. And so David talked to him for a good half hour, and he said, yeah, we use them for hemp in Europe. We're like, really? I mean, it's like, we're really on to something now. This is getting exciting. Not only that, he has just introduced them to America, and there was a dealer within 30 miles of our farm.
Wow.
We didn't even know about it. that was not listed on their website yet. So we felt like that was really, really fortunate. And
Yeah.
so, long story short on that, within 10 days, it was here at our farm to demo. And it was just, to demo. We had just started cutting hemp at the time, and it was a little bit green yet. It was a little bit before, it really should have been moved, but it was an opportunity. And so we used it on about 10 acres, I guess. I have 50 acres total. And the thing just did everything we wanted to. Just fine, except one problem.
Uh-oh.
The 4 to 5 foot long stalks that we had cut, remember with my double cut, they jammed up sometimes in it because they were just too long.
Too long. Okay.
And it just but no fault of the machine. The machine was not designed to handle 4 to 5 foot long stalks. So fortunately, we had not cut all our hemp yet. And so then we decided to take the time, and we actually did a double cut with our double cut. If you follow what I'm saying, we went around the field once with it higher, and then came around again and cut it again to make essentially 4 cuts. So we could try to get it down to 2 to 3 2 to 3 feet long things. So that machine was here to demo. That was 10 days ago or more, and then it went back. Now we know of one that we can use later when we're ready, but the Anderson one is actually coming today. We're going to try it.
Okay.
It's actually coming here in the next 2 hours. It's scheduled to. So we're going to try that one as well. Just why not?
Yeah,
why not?
yeah.
Because we're ready to go now. We want to see how this works on 2 to 3 foot long stalks. I'm very, very optimistic that it'll work. But that's where we're at with that right now, Eric.
That's cool. Couple of questions. First of all, can you share some video with us at some point of the two different mergers?
I got lots of video.
Okay. And we'll put that on the episode page.
You're going to love it.
All right. So the Reiter merger, that's Reiter, that's the company out of Austria. And then Anderson, Hay merger, that's out of Quebec.
Yes.
Getting back to the hemp, how did you decide it was time to cut it?
Well, that's just a wild question that nobody really knows. But the real answer, what I should tell you, is when the processor wants it cut, the maturity of it. But see, I'm planting 9 different varieties on a 25-acre test plot.
Yeah.
They're somewhat similar, but yet different. And some of the longer-term varieties that I have from China and from Australia are very long varieties. Actually, some of the stuff I planted in the 3rd week of May is still not budding yet.
Oh, wow.
And it's 12 feet tall. Is that a good variety or not? Well, it's impressive. We have to see what the fiber quality is.
Right.
So we're trying to answer that question, Eric, when to cut. And we have cut a couple different times here. And we are actually doing some, what I'm going to call hand retting, just testing some different things in that. And then also by hand looking at the fibers. And our plan is we're going to keep our varieties separate when we bale, which is coming up soon. And then we're going to give these samples to various processors, because the processors don't know what they even need.
Right.
And so the answer to that question is to be determined or being worked on, because it does ultimately, it's what the processor wants, but we're still in that for most of it here in the U.S. yet. We're still not there knowing even what they want.
And then it's the, further down the line, it's the manufacturers that need to give the specs to the processors so they know what they want. So it's all going to come down to the purpose that you're growing for eventually.
Yeah, I got to say, after being out there at IND Hemp and seeing their operation, and they're far ahead of us here in the East, but it just brought up so many more questions. Like this industry, we all know the potential, and that's great. But because there is so much potential, it's like, which road do you go? Which directions do you go? And as I've contemplated this, there's no way I can do it all. I don't even want to, not even near. So I got to start zoning in with some of the end users, and that's what we're trying to do right now. And the people that we feel can work with us and partner with us, and let's work together here. And I got the analogy of we're building a bridge, and some bridges, the way they're designed, they build from each end and meet in the middle and hopefully meet perfectly. And I feel like that's where we are in the hemp industry right now. We have the farmers are trying to figure out how to grow it, and the processors are trying to figure out how to process and even what they want. But we need to be talking to one another so that we hit in the middle perfect. If you
Yeah.
can follow that analogy.
Yeah.
So that's why there needs to be a partnership and a commitment from processors. Stick with us here. We want to work with you in the future. So let's work together in this, because it's a very complicated issue we have here, because we just haven't had any history.
Right.
We are literally, building it from scratch.
It's like putting the airplane together after you've taken off. Yeah.
I've said that several times. Yes.
So you've cut the hemp, some of it anyway. You've used the mergers. You've got it, out there retting. You talked about trying to figure out when it's going to be finished retting, but then what happens? You're going to bale it. And I think I saw you a couple weeks ago out at King's Agri-Seeds, and you were pretty excited about this McHale baler.
Yeah.
What's up with that? Did you get that? And is that going to work for you?
Yes, it's supposed to arrive here this week. It is, again, trying to reach out, ask people what is the best baler. And the response I've heard from probably a dozen different people who have literally baled hemp is almost any baler will work. That being said, round balers are preferred at this point, because that's better to process. It just seems to be better. Not that it has to be totally, and maybe that'll change in the future. Around here for haymaking equipment, the clear trend is to big square bales. So that kind of flies in the face of that. The thing that sets the McHale apart is it's made in Ireland, and they have been working with hemp for decades. It's never banned. So they have a hemp kit that they have for their baler that makes it a better hemp baler than most out there. It's a very heavy duty baler. It's literally weighs 2,000 to 3,000 pounds more than almost any other balers out there. So,
Wow.
I'm not here to compare. I'm just telling you what I've heard, and that's what we went with. So,
right. What makes it heavier? I didn't follow that.
It's built heavier. It's just built heavier. There's more steel in it, and when you know anything about hemp, that's a good thing. You want heavy duty. So that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. All right. I'm thinking now, like, I might want to come out and witness one of your harvest times.
I'll tell you what, Eric, after we make a few successful rounds, then you can come. Because I've done enough of innovation that sometimes it's frustrating at first. And this may just work right out of the box. I don't know. But we'll stay in touch about that. And because we got 50 acres of bales, it ain't going to be all done in one day.
Right. Well, even cutting too. You haven't cut everything yet, right?
We've cut most of it.
Oh, okay.
But I got lots of videos I can show you.
Cool.
Just so you know, we have left a small section of our variety plot just to watch them varieties continue to develop. And we've left another small section in another field just to kind of show people.
Yeah.
And then we have some later planted. We planted some as late as July the 15th. And the idea was can we position hemp to be planted after small grains are harvested here in the mid-Atlantic region? That is a window of opportunity. And we know right away that we have to get long season varieties.
Right.
Because, but we tested it, all 9 of my varieties, we tested planting in middle of July, and just like you would expect, the varieties that are shorter season, they have already flowered and they're like 3 feet high. They're done.
Right.
Well, that's not going to work. But some of the varieties that are longer season, they're growing. It's amazing how fast they grew. I'm encouraged with what I see. You get the right varieties, we can double crop after small grains. And I really think a lot of farmers will be interested in that more than early season.
Right.
Originally, at least for farmers to try it.
Right.
Because it's not deemed as quite as much of a cash crop that they're sacrificing, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty excited about what I'm seeing with some late planted hemp.
Yeah, there's just some neat stuff happening with genetics.
Like
what is it, like the day neutral? There was a big thing in CBD a couple of years ago, having these like day neutral plants, but I imagine that same, genetic stuff is going to work
Yeah.
for fiber and grain too.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Mhm.
Cool. All right. Well, what else is on your horizon here? What's happening at the farm
Well, this
otherwise?
whole issue of retting and how I've been putting it out there to several people I know have been working. When is the time to bale? How long does it need to ret? What do the manufacturers want? What's the compromise? See, I as a farmer, I want to get this off my field now. I want to plant my cover crop and take advantage of that. So that's the farmer in me. Of course, I also want to grow a good quality product with the hemp. So here we are right now in southeastern Pennsylvania. Since this hemp was cut, we only had two little rains on it, a tenth of an inch and barely two-tenths of an inch. I wish it would have been more. Right now, as of today, there's no rain in the forecast and it's supposed to be hot.
Super hot.
So from the hemp side, should probably leave it lay, but that's not going to happen. It's laying there for 2 weeks already. We're going to bail. Then we're gonna. That's why I said we're gonna start bailing because there's got to be some compromises somewhere. Am I doing the right thing or not? Well, I don't really know, but that's what I'm gonna do this year. Because for me right now, I want to get my cover crops planted in those fields, and you never know. We could get into a wet spell that there's 3 weeks where you can't bale it.
Right. Right.
That's the reality of agriculture. So I'm gonna get it in bales here coming up real soon. Conditions are like awesome on that side of things. So
Yeah.
that's the plan. But I gotta say the whole retting thing is something that we need to study a little bit more and see how important is it. And I know that some manufacturers they don't really need it retted very much.
Right.
I mean, there's this whole thing of winter retting. Just leave the stuff stand. Just leave it stand and then harvest it during the winter when you have a couple dry days. And there's some arguments for that. I can see that. Right now, I want something growing in my soil. So, that doesn't really appeal to my system. But if there's a market for that winter retted hemp, okay, we need to consider that.
Sure. Did you grow any grain on your farm this year?
No, I didn't because, I said earlier, there's so many different things to do with hemp that it's not mind-boggling. And the other thing with grain, my big barrier is my combine's too old. It would need. It's just not worth trying to get it hemp ready.
Yeah.
And I don't have any drying facility here to even convert. That's the reason I'm not doing it. I really hope someone else gets on that because I think that's a big deal. I've just chosen to go the fiber route. It fits me better right now. I wish I could do it. I would love to do it, but right now I don't have the bandwidth to do the grain. So I'm going to focus on fiber for the time being.
Yeah. Are you in touch with any other fiber growers in Pennsylvania? Like who else is cutting right now?
Well, there's not a lot. I'm trying to think here if I know of anybody that's cutting, and not comes to mind. I mean, in my circle here of a few of them, I'm aware of a few around, but I'm getting people ask me, we're going to need thousands of acres next year, and that may be true. But I'm going to say it's going to be hard to get farmers to commit because this is such a new crop. You have the legacy of the CBD debacle in the background. Biggest question for farmers is, am I going to get paid? Because there's no company that has any track record.
Right.
So then how do you do that if you step yourselves in the shoes of a company? Well, how do you incentivize farmers in order for them to de-risk this brand new crop? And that's a continued discussion that needs to be held. And I feel like as we go down the road here, part of the thing for me is, and I don't want to say all who I'm involved with and talking to because it's too premature, but once we have some more solid partnerships, as I was describing earlier, with end users, and some of those names are well known, I think that's going to bring some credibility when those representatives will come to a meeting or whatever. So I think it's coming. But right now, it's going to be a challenge to convince farmers to grow the acres you need. But then again, we really don't have the infrastructure.
Right.
There's just hardly, there's a flurry of activity. I myself am looking into, processing. But I know everyone I talk to, processing is an art. You don't just get the prescription and get the machinery and flick the switch and out comes beautiful fiber. And it takes, I've been told it takes 1 year at least just for one person to figure out how to run a machine, run their equipment. So
Right, right.
it's intimidating, but yet to me that's challenging. I don't
Yeah.
like boring.
Right. Well, I think the work that you're doing there on the farm is so important because it's, you're, giving the example to your neighbor farms,
Mhm.
like people around you are seeing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think, in a couple years they'll follow along, hopefully. I mean, you're down in southern Lancaster County and you're surrounded by a fair amount of Amish,
Mhm.
plain
Mhm.
community growers.
Yeah.
Are they still interested in hemp from what you
So
can tell?
that's a good question and very timely because just yesterday, my next door neighbor, who is basically a produce farmer and a young Amish farmer, and we have been making the hay for him, and the hay field is about finished. And he asked me if I had any ideas of what to plant next, and I said, well, would you be open for me to grow hemp on your land? And he said yes. So it's encouraging because he's seen it right across the fields,
Yeah,
and he's
yeah.
intrigued. He's intrigued. And one of the questions he asked was, well, do you want me to grow it for you, or do you want to just rent the land? And I said, I think it's best for both of us. I just rent the land. I'll take all the risk, and that way you have nothing to lose because
Okay.
we you still don't know.
You don't know.
It's
Yeah.
really going to pan out. Is the money there? Because I we're not even talking about price yet to some of these end users because they're all excited about it. But how much can they pay? And they're
Right.
going to
Show
base
me the
it
money.
on, and we know it's not going to be lucrative. But I really feel like some of the things I'm learning from Europe about keeping our cost of production down, I think we can be competitive.
Yeah.
I mean, why not? I really do think we can. The other thing too, Eric, keep in mind is there is a value on hemp as a rotational crop, and for farmers who don't have much of a rotation, there's value in that. I can't put dollars and cents to it, but there's value to that. The other thing is hemp is a relatively short season crop. You can plant it in May and have it off in the middle of August. So you have plenty of time to plant a good cover crop to set yourself up for whatever your next cash crop is next year.
Yeah.
There's value to that. So this plant brings that. And here's another thing that's lurking out there, and it may be the icing on the cake, is carbon credits.
Sure.
I haven't seen a carbon program yet I've seen some that I'm excited about, but I haven't signed up for any yet. I do know that hemp is going to be at the top of the heap because of the amount of carbon it can actually sequester. And then when you consider how you're like, they have a term for it, long-term carbon capture, because when you take a hemp plant and put it in a house, it's considered, long-term carbon capture. There's even a higher value. And I hear some pretty attractive numbers out there that will actually move the needle, regardless of what you think about carbon credits. That will move the needle, I think, for larger scale production because that's going to maybe be what is the tipping point for some farmers to get to jump into it.
Yep. Yeah, totally. Anything else you want to discuss?
I think that's probably
Yeah.
enough for now. I mean, we could go
Yeah.
deeper in some of this stuff, but I would just say in maybe wrap up here that this is going to be a slow, long journey. And I'm just trying to be realistic.
Yeah.
If I've had people ask me, should I grow hemp? Is the market ready? And some of these people I know them enough to say, no, it's not. Other people who you have to have a certain amount of tenacity to try something new. Those kind of people, I'll say, well, yes, let's plant a few acres. Uh, we don't, again, want to make the mistake that happened in the CBD side of it. I think, long, slow, deliberate
Slow
is
and steady.
important.
Yep.
The other thing too, Eric, is, this farm bill that, hopefully we'll get it out in the next couple months will give us it'll either be wind in our sails or breaks. I'm certainly optimistic that it's wind in our sails. because I've had farmers straight up tell me if I have to go get an FBI background check and get my fingers printed, I'm out.
Yeah.
Not doing it.
Yep.
And that's a very real reality that most bureaucrats do not understand. The perspective that farmers would have. So,
right.
If that's eliminated,
industrial has to be separated
absolutely.
from cannabinoids. Just we need like a big, strong division there.
Yep. And like you have been fond of saying, and I've said this before, Bart, with you, we want to make hemp a boring crop.
Big, boring, and ubiquitous. Yeah.
And I just got back from a 1,200-mile round trip to Indiana, a speaking engagement out there, and just thinking, I probably saw, I don't know, 1 million acres of corn and soybeans. And of course, not one stalk of hemp, but thinking what this could be in 20 years.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Going
out Interstate 80 in northern Ohio and Indiana. I'm like, man, it'd be just great to see a whole field of hemp here. And I think it will happen.
It's coming.
It's going to take time.
Yep. It's like I'm driving in today, up 322 coming into Lancaster County. And, it's just all corn. It's all beautiful. It's all in tassel right now. And you think, like, 100 years ago, this isn't what corn looked like. This isn't how they grew corn. Mm-hmm. And soybeans weren't around like they are now 100 years ago.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it's just neat. Fills me with hope. Things do change. Things
Absolutely.
Will change.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. All right, Steve. Well, it's great to catch up with you. I know you got some work to do, so we'll let you get back to it. Good luck with those new toys that are showing up at your place.
Thank you.
I'd like to come out sometime and check it out. So
I'll give you a heads up what we're doing.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you, Eric.
All right, see ya. Okay, and just like that, today's show comes to an end. Thank you so much for listening. If you ever have questions or comments, or you just want to say, hey, send an email to me. You can send it right to podcast@lancasterfarming.com, or you can leave me a voicemail, 717-721-4462. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out online. You can go to the show page for this episode and click on all of those links. Be sure to check out our sponsors, I&D Hemp and Amerisol Cast Hemp. And check out that USDA handbook, that hemp handbook. That looks really cool. So, all right, until next time, I'll see you in the newspaper.
Industrial hemp.
Season 3, Episode 33 of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2023 by Lancaster Farming newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written and recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Herlock, and the music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tinbird Shadow.